The following is an Operation Podcast production.
Becoming a mom has been the most beautiful superpower I don't know how to put words around it. I've tried so hard to think about this, but I have such my own purpose and intention now that like everything I do is for my kids and my family and my partner. And it's like, how do I make the life we want to have through building this business and finding success in it? So I have this like crazy North Star. I'd never felt like that before. When my first child was born, it was like, whoa, this is bigger than me. And people, like when you think about a purpose-driven person, and what I mean by that isn't just like, you know, people who give back, but it's like, no, my values align with what this company is
Thank you for, I was just going to inject the word values
so
into this
like
conversation.
Core values, like when you think about what a company stands for and what their values are and how they operate, and does that align with who I am and who I want to be? Great, then I'd love to work there. So how can we bring those people together?
And it will stimulate your fear.
Right,
it will stimulate your scarcity.
It
will stimulate you feeling like everything all the time is moving at warp speed competition pace, rather than slowing down and really listening to your own intuition, listening to your own values, staying in your lane. And it will also magnify obstacles to make them feel insurmountable when they're actually not.
Are you ready for a wild ride? I'm Alexis Artin, and I invite you to strap in because this is more than a podcast. This is Look at Me Now.
Hello, everybody. Welcome. I am sitting here with somebody that I am really excited to introduce to you. This is an avenue that we haven't explored yet on this podcast. I'm sitting here with Colleen Pelly, and she is the founder of Linchpin, and it's purpose-driven recruitment. And as soon as I hear purpose-driven, I'm in. I'm in, right? And to explore it through the humanity of pulling people together under a common purpose, under common values is so intriguing to me. And I'm so excited to have you here. Colleen Pelly, thank you.
Thank you. Thanks so much for having me. I'm excited to be here.
I'm really, like I said, as soon as I hear something like purpose-driven, I'm all in, because I don't think, I think purpose is like a hashtag and it trends and whatnot, but I don't think a lot of people really understand the like deep current of being on purpose,
right,
let alone doing things on purpose, let alone doing something like recruiting people based on purpose.
Yeah.
So I really want to like sink my teeth into that.
I feel like it can mean so many different things too, right? Like I think you can take the word, and I think there's intention is a great word, like purpose and intention. And for us, like, or for me, when I started Linchpin, a big piece of it was I never felt like the recruitment process with agencies I worked with sort of landed with me. Mm-hmm. And candidate experience wasn't taken in. And like, it's like people were forgetting there's like humans in the process and there's like human beings on the other side of that email. And so when I think about purpose-driven companies, a big piece of that was not only aligning with sort of who they are and how they operate, but like, how do you treat your people? And when you use the word, are you intentional in the way you operate? Are you intentional in the way you, treat your team members and like bring people on board? And then, the more sort of tactical side is like, we're very sort of on purpose in terms of the way we communicate, like sense of urgency. We're very transparent. So it's kind of like a layered meaning, but I think there's a way to really have teams and people, like when you think about a purpose-driven person, and what I mean by that isn't just like, people who give back, but it's like, no, my values align with what this company is hiring.
I was just going to inject the word values into this conversation.
Core values, like when you think about what a company stands for and what their values are and how they operate, and does that align with who I am and who I want to be? Great, then I'd love to work there. So how can we bring those people together?
And that is what is going to intrinsically motivate and inspire everybody.
And your retention will be more, like people will stay longer, your turnover will be less. So I think so for us, it's about figuring out more than just sort of like the technical requirements of a job, and like what's the emotional intelligence and like the behavioral aspects of what's needed, and then how do we find the right company for them. And what's been cool as I've sort of continued to grow the business is we can kind of get more picky in particular about who we work with, because it's like, oh no, I actually don't think we're aligned. And it took me a little while to kind of find my groove, because when you're starting a business, you kind of need money and you need clients, but now you're at a point where you're like, oh no, okay, maybe I'm not the right fit for you, and that's okay. And like, we're going to find a company that we feel really good about.
And I think that this is such a great mirror for how we could live our lives. Right? Like, where are we self-recruiting in ways that are supportive and aligned? And where are we not? Where are we recruiting values that aren't ours? And in the relationships that we're choosing, the habits that we're taking on, it's really, I mean, we could really spin out into,
it's easy to do.
out into the cosmos, like on all of this. But, and maybe we'll get back to that. But I would love to focus on how you ended up in this purpose for yourself, because there is always a story that is unique, that, you know, that mess that brings us to our message. So I would love to actually look back on the timeline, as we do on the show, as a starting place, like the seeds of how this all germinated and came to be. Like, tell us a little bit of your backstory.
I would love to. And it's funny, right? Because it's never just one thing.
No, it's
There's
not.
different pieces that come together.
Of course.
So I've been in...
That's what makes a story juicy.
Exactly.
And exciting, and you want to tune in.
Well, and human. That's the whole point, right? But I've been in recruitment for a long time and started at Lululemon. So I was working retail, like, as I was a student, and that kind of turned into holiday hiring, which introduced me to recruitment, and I fell in love with it. And that turned into an internship, which turned into a job. So started at retail level. And then I moved out to Vancouver, where one of Lulu's head offices is, and that's what brought me out west. And did everything there, sort of from, you know, technical to corporate executive type hiring. And from there, I was headhunted over to Tesla to sort of start their Canadian recruitment function. And so that hadn't existed yet. So it was this cool opportunity for me to build. And then we hit our first mess. And so I was a part of one of many mass layoffs at Tesla. And it truly, I don't know, just the way I operate as a human, I take everything so personally that I made it about my ability to do my job, my ability to operate, and my ability to move forward. And it's not about, like, slow down, Colleen, it's not about you. Like, a lot of times, like, I think I could go off on a side tangent on this, but a lot of times layoffs aren't about, it's like the economical reality of where the company's at, or maybe where project's based, things like that. But I took that really hard. And I was trying to figure out what to do. And my husband, boyfriend at the time, now husband, but he was talking about how I always complained about the recruitment process with external partners. And he was like, you always tell me you can do it better. And you always tell me you think there's like a more human side to it. So why don't you try? And so I started it sort of really part-time. I did get another full-time job in tech recruitment, but I was trying to sort of create this vision or this world that I had always wanted to experience in the recruitment space. And so how do I make the candidate experience, the client experience, the way we operate, the way we talk to each other, how do I make all of that what I want it to be? And
which is a lot more humane.
Yeah.
Maybe is the phrasing.
Yeah,
I don't know.
And I think it's like, that's how it should be. And I think what's challenging is obviously there's these behemoth recruiting agencies who maybe don't have that human side. And so how do I find my way in? So that first mess is sort of like the first catalyst to why things started. And then so when I first started everything, I reached out to everyone I knew, right? I was like, I'm trying to start my own thing. Hey, like, let's focus on, the whole point of recruitment is relationships, right? So like, how do we bring people in? And then when I went on my first maternity leave, just all of my business development efforts at one time came to fruition. And it was like, hey, okay, maybe I just won't take a mat leave and I won't go back to this tech job, and I'll kind of go all in. So it was this crazy risk reward moment where, and also guilt because you're trying to be present for your baby, all these things. But that was sort of like the catalyst, was like, okay, let's just take a chance on it and take a chance on me. And I know I can do this. And yeah, he's almost 4 now. And we've been able to grow this little team across North America and supporting some really fun companies. And I'm really proud of it. But it definitely was a scary time to be like, I guess, yeah, let's try this. Let's go all in.
Wow. Okay.
That's a lot quickly said.
Yes.
Yeah.
I mean, launching a company while you're on maternity leave makes my brain explode.
It's a wild decision.
It is. Did you sleep? Were you sleeping ever?
No. It's interesting because, as you know, like when they're newborns, they sleep all the time, right? So it's a lot of like eat, sleep.
But they also don't. It's like, because the rotation of I'm up and I'm feeding.
You're feeding every 2 or 3 hours.
Right.
Yeah.
And then the diaper, then they need to be burped, and then the diaper needs to be changed, and then they have to get back down, and then all of a sudden it's like, oh, it's feeding time again.
So I think I was blessed with a baby who stuck to a schedule for me.
Oh, wow.
And so I owe him a lot. I mean, I also tried really hard to like have wake windows and work through that for myself, but it worked. And so I was able to do these sort of 2-hour increments where he was sleeping. And like in complete transparency, it was really hard. I was exhausted, and you're so emotional already and your hormones are wild. So you're crying all the time and taking the lows lower than you probably normally would because you're so tired.
So I've got to ask, like,
tell me,
so that anybody who's listening can relate on some level to this.
Yeah.
There has to be such a deep drive.
Okay. Thank you for saying that, because I will say becoming a mom has been the most beautiful superpower I don't know how to put words around it. I've tried so hard to think about this, but I have such my own purpose and intention now that like everything I do is for my kids and my family and my partner. And it's like, how do I make the life we want to have through building this business and finding success in it? So I have this like crazy North Star, and I'd never felt like that before. And I've always loved my work, and I've always loved recruitment. But when he was born, when my first child was born, it was like, whoa, this is bigger than me. And I have this incredible motivation that I've never experienced. So I think like, because I look back, you're like, I don't even know how I did it, to be totally honest, because you're exhausted, you're not sleeping. I'm trying to build something from scratch that you go from being an expert in something to all of a sudden building a business. And I don't know, all of a sudden I'm a CEO. Okay. Let me figure it out. Right? Like
and not only the drive of, oh, wow, like I am so motivated by my love for this.
Oh, it's crazy.
For this human being.
So powerful.
But also the drive to say, and in addition to that, I'm also so motivated to start this company at this time.
It was a wild journey. And then, then I had my daughter, and then, didn't take another mat leave, and I'm expecting again. So
I guess my question to you is, in the midst of all of this, right? Like this sort of dueling drive, right? Of I have this drive to, care for and pour all of myself into mothering. Yeah. And then I simultaneously have this drive to pour all of myself into building a new company, into my career potential and possibility. How are you continuing to navigate those two things simultaneously? Because I know there are a lot of people out there that have competing desires.
I will by no means say I'm an expert at it, but I think in addition to that, right, I'm also a daughter and a sister.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so and a
we
friend.
Wear all the hats.
I'm trying to get my body healthy again, all these things. So like you're trying to be everything to everyone. And my biggest lesson is that's not possible. And it's not. It's a myth. There's no way to do it. And so I learned that the hard way, definitely. And I think I also am a people pleaser, guilty. And so you're trying to make everything okay for everyone at all times. And all that happens is you end up sort of failing at a lot of things. And instead of, my learning or my takeaway from it was, instead of trying to be everything to everyone, I'm going to be everything to the thing I'm focusing on. And so it was really, it sounds so simple, but it was just like prioritizing and blocking my time so very specifically and thoughtfully. And so like if I'm with my kids, my phone's not on and I'm not worrying about it and I'm completely focused on mom mode. And then when I know they're safe and they're sleeping or whatever that is, I can switch modes and I'm fully focused on work, and that's what I'm considering. So my only real advice is I don't think we can be everything to everyone, and give yourself grace, please, because I don't think I did. And I think it's remembering that we're all doing our best and let's focus on what we can at one time, and you'll end up doing more better, really, because you're finishing things completely instead of just sort of half-assing everything, for lack of a better word.
Right. And there are so many pulls on our attention and distractions, right? From giving everything to one thing. There's this phrase that is used in a lot of like the Army, the Navy, and specifically the Navy SEALs, I think use this. And it's slow is smooth and smooth is fast.
Ooh, okay. Yes. I like that.
And it's about knowing that, slow down, put all of your attention and focus on doing the task at hand, and you won't have to go back and clean anything up.
Yeah.
It'll happen quicker than you think because all of your resources are dedicated to this task at hand.
Yeah.
And by nature of that, when you look back at it, you'll actually have gone faster than if you had rushed and been sloppy.
Right. And it's like the direct path to where you want to be too. Like when you said that, it really reminded me too of like, it's so easy to get distracted by competitors in your space. Like recruitment's a very saturated space. And so it's very easy to be like, oh, they did this, or oh my gosh, they're doing this.
I should be doing this.
Am I supposed to be? And it's like, I really need to remind myself not to.
Well, and that goes
I'm not
back,
trying to be that.
Yes, and that goes back to hijacking. Well, it goes to compare and despair, right? But then
Oh,
also
man, it's
like
so bad.
or FOMO or whatever. But like
Yeah.
hijacking other people's values
Right.
because you think that somehow that is going to get you to be better, do better, have
Right. But
more.
that's not who I'm trying to be.
But that's not who, it's not aligned
Yeah,
back to the
totally.
beginning of the conversation,
Yeah.
right? Well, it's interesting that you outed yourself as a people pleaser.
Oh,
I'm
man.
sure a lot of people that are listening to this can see themselves inside of that statement. Take me back, all the way back.
Okay.
How did the people pleasing take shape in you? Where did it
Ooh,
start?
this is a great question. I'm going to tell you immediately my answer feels like I have no idea, but let's think about it because I probably do know.
It's something happened in childhood,
Yeah,
right?
well, for
Like-
sure. I'm the youngest. So there's probably something there. And like you always go with the flow because things are already established and you want to make sure everyone's, I don't know, there's just always been this thing where I wanted to make sure everyone was okay all the time. So something must have happened where I felt like, I don't know, unsettled or something. But I definitely feel like there's always been this need for me is like if I'm in a room or if you're at a party, I'm always going to be the person talking to the person who no one's talking to. Because I'm immediately like, I'm drawn to you. I want to make sure you're okay.
You're an
there's
empath.
like, definitely. And I think it's hindered me in some ways and it's definitely helped me in some ways too. I think, a lot of my job is connecting with people. And I think like when you have that vulnerability, you're open to that, like people are drawn to you and they're open to having a conversation with you. But yeah, I think, even in school, I always wanted to do well. I wanted my teachers to like me. I wanted other kids to like me. Like that's just, it's such a funny thing. And my dad's so amazing. He like has this magic ability where he was like, you just need to not care what people think. And I'm like, you make that sound like it's so simple. And it's something I aspire to. I admire about him so much. It's so funny. And he's like, just stop caring what they think. That's the best way to do it. And I'm like, how?
And what about like the mother figure in your life?
No, my mom's amazing. She's more like me. We're like
Okay, so
aware of our surroundings.
that was modeled for you.
Yeah,
people-pleasing.
and I think what's beautiful about her too is because we have that like caretaking piece. Like you're always so loved and you're so seen, but it's like, are you putting yourself first? And she definitely put everyone else before her, and like sort of. What's that saying? Like you're supposed to put your own oxygen mask on
Yes.
first before, and I would
Oh,
say
yeah.
like she was always like, "Are you okay?"
Not just
And
a saying, like a
also,
fact.
You should, yeah,
A fact.
Right. Yeah.
Like when you fly, that is like one of the first things they tell you
Yeah.
and demonstrate for you on every flight.
I would say she like put everyone else first too, and so I think there's that's learned behavior, and but I'm trying to kind of do both. I want to be there for everyone and do that, but also
well,
like,
and the only
remember
way
I'm
to
here
do
too.
that, right, is
Yeah.
like you can't do that if you're unconscious because you have no
Yeah,
oxygen.
and what I've learned too is like my husband and I have been trying really hard to like the things that are important to us, like if you want to go on a walk or if you need to get a run and whatever that is, it's like how can I support you to make sure that gets done in your day? And when we take time for ourselves, man, we're such better people.
Well, I'm really glad that you said that because there is a through line so far in the conversation of like core values,
Yeah.
right? And so often what people miss in terms of relationships, intimate partnerships for sure, but any relationship, even in the recruitment relationship, right? There is how do our values align?
Right.
But looking at that through the lens of how can my highest values help you achieve your highest values?
Right.
And how can your highest values help me achieve my highest values?
Right.
Because when we meet in that space, we're both going to be thriving.
Yeah.
Right. And we're both going to feel seen. We're both going to feel supported. We're both going to feel like our deepest needs are being met. There's not going to be any resentment. There, you know, it's like it just builds on itself. It's anabolic, like a steroid, you know?
It's kind of amazing how everything feels smooth. Like you used that word smooth before, and it's true. It's like you feel like you're more connected with your partner. You're feeling like a more connected mom. I'm feeling like things are working, like clicking at work, that kind of thing. And so it's like,
Yes.
and all that, the only shift is like, did I time to like prioritize myself first? So
Yes.
when you're talking about balancing everything, it's like remembering to put in those pieces for yourself too, in addition to all the big meetings you have and picking up your kids from daycare and et cetera. But it's like also like, did I have time for me today?
Well, it's also like that I had a mentor who always talked about, you know, that when you're in a relationship with somebody, it's almost like, you know, you have to be their best customer.
Yeah.
Right. And if you're not their best customer, then, you know, they're going to go shop somewhere else or whatever.
Right.
Like there is such a, like a crucial understanding of, you know, what makes a good customer and what makes a good supplier, right? Is like there's an exchange of value.
Yeah.
Right? Like, oh, they have great quality. Oh, they, you know, they give me a great deal. They give, you know, all of that kind of stuff. And it's like, that's what's going to keep me coming back and keep me loyal and keep me spending here rather than somewhere else.
Right.
And how are we doing that in our relationships?
Yeah.
Right. And not to people please in order to keep the customer, but to say like, oh, I'm feeding you what it is that you care about.
And what you need. And
what you need.
And in recruitment, like I'm solving your problem in the way that works for both of us. And
so we see equal value. Yeah. There's an equal exchange of value.
Yeah.
And that is what is going to keep us, you know, synced up. And the other thing that this mentor used to say is, you know, whatever you're not willing to do, you have to be willing to delegate.
right.
And if you think about that in terms of an intimate relationship,
Okay.
right? It's like, well, whatever you're not willing to do with your partner, you have to be willing to delegate.
Right.
Because they will go somewhere else for whatever you're not willing to do unless you're having conscious conversations about that and renegotiating it. And, you know, how you do one thing is how you do anything.
Yeah.
I'm a real believer. So, it's such an interesting topic to talk about because you can really bring this to any area of your life, your relationship with money, your relationship with your health and fitness, your relationship with, you know, the environments that you keep, your relationship with your job, all of those things all apply, right? And it's so interesting because in the career space in people's lives, like in that little pie sliced, you know, piece of their wheel of life when when they look at career, they really remove some of those key personal elements of their values, of what actually motivates them, what they actually care about. And that's when you see people who are burnt out. Yeah. That's when you see people who are, you know, resentful, who aren't being creative and utilizing their skills, their gifts, their talents.
Right.
And, you know, the company isn't benefiting off of them. And I mean, I'm sure you could speak even more to this than I am right now in terms of people not feeling valued at their company, motivated by their company, rewarded by their company or their job per se, and more so.
Yeah, but if you're not feeling seen or appreciated, why am I gonna work hard? Like, why would I stay here?
And especially for even the entrepreneurs out there that are listening to this, it's like it can be a real struggle bus, you know,
especially at the beginning when you're starting a business. There's so much.
To feel like, so much going out and not a lot coming back in.
There's so much no in your face all the time.
And there's not that support structure of we see you and we value you and here's the immediate return on your investment into, you know, believing. That's
where that North Star is super useful. It's like, I can see this. I know this is where I'm supposed to go and I just need to remember that.
Can you speak a little bit more to that? Like, how do you know? How did you know? How did that North Star become clear to you? How do you keep it in your sights?
False sense of reality? No. Yeah, I think I have, you know, I think I'm self-aware in a way that I know what I'm great at and I know what I'm not great at. And I can confidently tell you I know I'm very good at my job. And I've always felt authentic in recruitment. And it always felt like, oh, this is easy and this is what I'm supposed to be doing. Like sort of that very comfortable feeling, regardless of the company. It was always just like, I like this work. I like helping other people. I like this a lot. And so deep down, I knew fundamentally I can do this job. What I don't know is how do I build a client base, right? So I think, but I brought it back to like, what am I great at? And so it was like, I'm great at relationship building. Okay, you've had this career for, you know, over a decade or 15 years. So how do I reach out to those relationships I've built? And then I can turn that into a client. So I think a lot of it for me in general, I try so hard to bring things back to data and metrics and prove myself wrong when I'm in that space of sort of imposter syndrome. And so staying aligned to, I know that I can do this. I know I'm capable of it. And I want to. Like, you have to want to do it too. Like, I think more than anything, I don't know what the stat is, but like a very high number of people who start businesses fail. And they aren't successful. And so it's like, I know I want to not be in that stat. I want to be in the small percentage that's successful. And like I said, this whole parenting piece really brought in this and I want to do it for them and I want to show them that I can. And like, it takes a village is a cheesy saying, but like, I'm so lucky I have such a supportive family and friends and partner who you could go to and be like, I feel like it's not working. And it's like, no, it is. Let's talk about it. And so it's not always easy, and it's not like it was always this straight line where I knew it was going to be fine, but I definitely had to remind myself that I know I can do this. And so I think for me, it was like, there's a confidence in what I'm great at. So by no means am I perfect and have confidence in every aspect of my life. It's like I'm doing a lot of work on that. But I think what I've always known is I'm great at what I do. And how do I get back to other people and how do I show them that has always been the hardest part.
Well, you're talking about the why being so big that the how will always figure itself out.
Yeah.
And that, almost the drive, the desire, the knowing that this is your path is strong enough to override the fear you have of picking up the phone or sending the email and making a vulnerable ask.
Well, and what's the worst that's going to happen? Right. And so that was always okay, so they say no. I might as well try. You're never going to know if you don't try. And I think what you just said resonated too. I think I don't know, maybe I'm delusional, but I've just always believed everything's going to be fine. It's all going to work out. And I think,
have you always felt that way?
Yeah, I think even I'm just thinking.
Even as a people pleaser?
Yeah, well, I think I deep down, I know I'm safe. I've always felt safe. I know I'm safe. It's I'm going to be fine. And I think even I'm thinking of this embarrassing example where I remember once I dropped my passport at the airport. And I remember I was with my husband and this man came up. He's like, oh, I think this is you. And I just was like, oh, fantastic. And I remember my husband's so logical that he was like, Colleen, how did you just lose your passport? And I was like, yeah, but he brought it back. It's all good. It all worked out.
It all worked out.
And so I've always been a little bit of a dreamer in that way. And that was so funny because he was like, you can't just, okay.
Well, I will say that I'm not one to make blanket statements. So I was saying 99.99999% of people that I've talked to in a 20-year, coaching, whatever, career, embodiment, blah, blah, blah. I've always done this line of questioning with people when they present a fear to me.
Great.
And I basically I analogize it to say it's almost like I find this loose thread in a sweater that's hanging out, and I start to pull it. Okay, and I'm
great.
Okay, and I keep pulling and I keep pulling and I keep pulling to see the whole sweater unravel.
What's there? Yeah.
And then they're the emperors with no clothes on, right? Until I just get to the root of the first knot of where this sweater started, right? So it's I'm unraveling the fear and going all the way back to sort of the central nervous system going, this is what we're actually scared of. This is what our animal body is petrified is going to be the end of us, right? And it really is a very simple process of asking, and so then what does the fear think will happen?
Okay.
And so, I'm scared that if I, speak back to my boss about something that I don't agree with, that then he'll be angry with me. Okay, well, that's just fear talking. It's just a part of you. It's not all of you, right? But what does the fear think will happen? Fear is just there to protect you, right? It's doing a dress rehearsal for worst case scenarios.
Yeah,
so what does fear actually think will happen? Let's just play it out. And well, fear thinks that then he's going to, he or she will be angry with, or they will be angry with me, and I won't get the promotion.
I'll lose my job. I'll lose my
whatever.
house. Yeah.
And then we start pulling. And then what does fear think will happen? And then what does fear think will happen, right? And 99, I want to say everybody, but 99.999% of people, when we get to the end of that and we get to the very first knot, the fear is, I will be alone. I will be in pain.
Yep.
I won't have the resources to do anything to change it. And I will die that way.
Whoa. Yeah.
And I know it sounds extreme. Like we just started with my boss is going to be upset with me, to that equating to I'm going to be alone in pain without the resources to shift that, and I'm going to die that way.
Right.
But that really is 99.999% of the time. I've done this a lot.
Yeah. That's
is really what it leads to.
Yeah.
And the reason that is true is because, you talked about, well, I'm human, right? And our human nature is very animalistic.
Okay. Yeah.
Our nervous systems are wired to fight, flight, freeze, fawn, or rest and digest. We have the sympathetic and the parasympathetic sympathetic nervous systems. And so, we are swinging like a pendulum very often from like predator prey to, where's the end of me, and where is, for survival, and where is the best of me for thrival.
Yeah.
And it's innate for us to sort of navigate ourselves based on that human experience. But what is so interesting is I have this phrase that I use a lot, which is our body is our compass for our soul's true north.
Okay.
And our body is actually our best asset in terms of your body cannot lie to you. Your brain will lie all the time.
Right.
But your body cannot lie. And, your soul's purpose is a certainty. And your body is really always trying to tell you whether or not you're on or off track in pursuing that purpose. Right?
Yeah.
In pursuing that North Star. It is a GPS that is always navigating you. Yeah. When you get dis-ease, or symptoms, it's telling you, you're moving away from your North Star versus toward it.
Yep.
Right? Your mind will lie to you all day and go, no, we need to go over here. We need to people please. Like, we need to make sure that, don't upset the boss. Don't speak the truth, because then, we'll cease existing and we won't be able to pursue what we're here to pursue.
Right.
And I know I'm sort of spinning off a little bit into woo-woo verse.
Yeah.
But, I do that because I really want to root for people.
Yeah.
Like in a sense of what we do and don't have control over. We don't have control over what, the outcome is going to be of the actions that we take, of speaking back to the boss or whatever. But what we do have control over is having self-agency to speak the truth.
Yep.
And what we do have agency over is, no matter what the outcome of that is, being supportive to ourselves rather than being harmful to ourselves.
Yes.
For moving in the direction of our North Star.
Yeah.
For listening to our body's deep knowing of when we're on or off track.
Right.
And continuing to pursue that at all costs that are external, because internally we have all the tools to know that, God is our only employer. I say that sometimes, right? And so I say all of that to you going from the perspective of recruitment and hearing me say that somebody thinks that, not being able to self-advocate in a corporation means I might die, right? Or them bringing in their own soul certainty to be able to talk back to a boss or whatever. Like, how does that fit into the dynamic of what purpose-driven recruitment is?
Yeah, I think my brain immediately goes to, how do we turn fear into like a useful tool? And so I think, because you're not wrong, I think there's like an underlying fear in a lot of what everyone operates in. But like, if I'm thinking about me, if I'm worried about not being enough, or, not pleasing everyone in that way, then how do I turn that into, okay, well then just be successful. Just make it work then. So I like kind of try to tell myself, if I'm worried about failure, okay, that's like, well then don't let failure be an option. And so I think what's the work for me has been, like the people pleasing side is like a boundary space, right? And I think like what I've been working really hard on is setting boundaries in terms of like, this is how we operate our business and this is what Linchpin's going to look like. And if that doesn't work for you as a client, that's okay. Maybe I'm just not the right fit for you. And it took me a while to get there. Like I've talked about this before, but at the beginning you give discounts because you're just trying to get clients, and it kind of discounts your brand and your value. And I feel like, anyone I talk to who's starting a lot of people reach out who are starting recruiting firms, and I'm happy to chat with everyone. And I'm like, just don't discount yourself. Know your worth and know your value, and it actually will be more powerful. And so turning fear into a superpower is useful. But yeah, on the candidate side, like when you're working somewhere internally and you have those fears about bringing up or having those tough conversations, one, make sure you're coming from, you still want to be in a professional place where you're taking the emotion out of it. So if you're really frustrated, don't send the email or have the conversation that day. Give yourself a minute to regulate. But I think if you're coming from a place that's valid and logical and you're sharing how you're feeling and you're asking for something and it's not received well, maybe it's not the right culture.
Yeah, and having that clarity
is kind of good.
What matters.
It's easier to say that. I know people are like, well, I need a job and I need to pay
right.
Like, I completely understand that, but I think maybe what that is then is it's the catalyst for you to like start
a job that actually aligns for you
Yeah.
and having the clarity about what you actually care about.
Yeah.
I think is the drain that I'm circling.
Yeah,
here.
what really matters to you, and it's not just like what product are they selling or what service do they have, but is the way they operate their business aligned with how you want to be in the world? Yeah, the culture
Yes.
and like what they've created. And, even something as simple as you can tell a lot from a company about their onboarding process. It's like when you start at a company, like you go through the recruitment process and then you start, it's like, are they setting me up for success and like sharing what it's like to work here and making sure I feel like I have everything and all the tools I need to do my job well? And that's like, for me, an immediate red flag or not.
Yeah.
And it doesn't have to be elaborate. Like I know some companies have a lot more money and they can make a crazy, I don't mean it like that. I just mean like, have you put thought into making sure I feel set up coming into this company and not just like thrown into a mess?
Yeah. And I love going back to this idea of feeling really clear on your why. Mm-hmm. To overcome objections and obstacles because you are so clear on your why, because you are so motivated and driven based on the values, based on the culture, whether you're an entrepreneur or at a corporation. There is so much in our society, especially now with social media and being able to see everything all the time at an instant and seeing the best version of it that's being curated.
You do often just see the best, and that it's that you said something earlier, it was like compare and despair.
Yeah.
Man, that's real.
And it will stimulate your fear.
Right,
it will stimulate your scarcity.
It
will stimulate you feeling like everything all the time is moving at warp speed competition pace. Rather than slowing down and really listening to your own intuition, listening to your own values, staying in your lane, all of that will inflame imposter syndrome that we were talking about so much. And it will also magnify obstacles to make them feel insurmountable when they're actually not.
Yeah.
When you really know your why and you really feel purpose-driven about what you're doing, why you're doing it, and how you're doing it.
And I think your why can shift too, like as we evolve, right? And so I think like, because I feel like a lot of people
when you had kids, your why shifted 100%. Hugely.
Yeah, because people hear that and they're like, well, my why is I want to pay my rent. Like it's like I totally understand that, but I think it's like, okay, so if you're financially driven at the beginning of your career because you're just starting out, then yes, you need to make sure the compensation aligns, but still going back to like the internal purpose and the internal why, even though it doesn't feel like that's your priority, it's going to help you in the long run. You don't. That's
kind of the rub here too, is like you can have the money and have the thing that you love. I was, the other day I posted something on social media, on my stories, so it's not there anymore. Sorry. But I'm repeating it here.
That's okay. Great.
So just this, again, is something that another mentor of mine used to say, which was, it was a game that we used to play in group together. So anytime somebody would present a challenge to the group, he would turn it back on them and say, how can you make it fun and easy to overcome this?
How can you make it fun? I like that.
How can you make it fun and easy to overcome this thing that you feel like is such a hard push for you, a heavy lift
Let's make
for
it
you,
fun and easy.
an overwhelming challenge for you that you're dreading. Let's, as a group, brainstorm together. How can we make this fun and easy for you? And it sort of just harkens back to this sort of overarching coaching concept of, well, what else is possible here?
Yeah.
Right. And so anybody that's limiting themselves and going, well, no, I've got to do it for the money. It's like, okay, that's that's clear. Money is a necessity, sure. And does that have to be the only box that gets checked?
Yeah, 100%.
In seeking this out?
I love
What if there
that.
was actually alignment as well? What if it was actually fun and easy and you were making money?
What if? I love that. Well, and even the what if question around, it's easy to say, if I do this, I'll fail, or if I have this conversation, I'll get fired, or it's like, well, what if it works out?
Right.
And it's that, again, that's another thing that sounds so simple, but I say that to myself all the time. I'm like, well, what if everything's great? What if it's exactly what I hope it is? What if this conversation goes exactly the way I want it to, instead of my mindset being like, this is going to be terrible. It's not going to go well. I'm going to fail. It's like,
And it's
can
so
we shift
funny.
perspective?
Again, I go back to the part of you that's like, I've been such a people pleaser. And it's like, well, if you didn't people please, why was there the part of you that went, I have to people please or it won't work out?
Well, I feel if I'm going to think about like where that came from too, it's sort of like, worth is the wrong word. I'm trying to like people pleasing to equate to like people liking me. And if they like me, then
That's the only way that will work out?
or I'll be seen as smart or wanted or needed. I get like needed is a big thing for, I love being needed. So I always fall into this role of like people come to me for advice or ask for help, and it's draining, but I love it. And so I think the people pleasing side, why it works for me at my business is because I want to create the ultimate candidate and client experience. And I've kind of turned it into, I want them to love working with us so much. So I've shifted, again, no one's perfect. I'm still a work in progress, but I've tried to shift it away from like, I really need them to like Colleen.
Yes.
To like, let's take that people pleasing energy to like, I just need them to have the best experience with us as a company, and then they'll come back. So I've kind of just shifted what it means to me.
I totally get it. But I
Yeah.
guess what I'm curious about is when we people please, there is the other part of us that's like, if I don't people please, there's going to be a price to pay.
Yep.
Versus if I don't people please, everything's going to work out for me, because you are an everything's going to work out for me person, but you're also a people pleaser that goes, but if I don't people please, it won't work out for me.
Well, so I think it's like they tie into each other in that, well, I'm just going to keep doing it because then it'll work out. So I think like
It's a catch-22.
well, because in the like on the business side of it, it's like if they don't have a good experience, they're not going to come back. They're not going to refer our business to their friends. They're not going to need help with hiring anymore. And so that side of it is like, well, we have to keep everyone happy but you also want to operate in a way that feels good for you. So this year was the first time that I sort of ended a partnership with a client because it wasn't working. And that was crazy to me because, like we were getting hundreds of thousands of dollars from them, but it just got to the point where I was like, we're not treating people the same way. And I don't think it makes sense. And that was a conversation I wouldn't have had 2 years ago. So that's cool to hear. They're cool to think about that we were able to, and it wasn't, there's no animosity. It wasn't angry. It was just like, I don't think I'm the right partner for you anymore. And like, here's some people who I think you might like more. And I'm happy to like introduce you. And it was received fine. It was great. And I was so worried about it for like a month. I waited because I was so nervous to have the conversation. And it ends up, on paper, that sounds like such a silly financial decision, but I'm going to look at it as like, I'm opening the door for the people who are right.
Well, one of the coaching programs that I went to, IPEC, the one that I was certified as a professional coach through, they have like all these core tenets. And one of their core tenets was, whatever is in my highest good is always and in all ways in the highest good of everyone.
Okay. Right.
And so it's sort of this deeper faith or trust that even when you are, in your mind's eye, rejecting something or ending something because it is not serving you or them, whether they see it or not, is sort of like irrelevant, because in the end, it really is. If it's not working for you, then it's not serving them. And you really have to believe. And this is for anybody that's in any sort of a relationship where they feel like there is an imbalance of equity.
Right.
There is only service in speaking up for the truth.
Yep. Yeah.
Right.
I love that.
And having that clarity, again, clarity just being so crucial in all of this. Clear on, are we aligned? Clear on, I have to know my purpose to know whether or not it aligns with what this company's is. I have to know my values. I have to know their values. And then I have to figure out whether or not it's a yes for both of us.
Yeah.
And if it's not a yes, then it's a no. And there's nothing wrong with no. Yes lives in the land of no.
Yes. I think there's definitely a stigma around like no always being bad. And, no, if it's not a hell yes, it's a hell no. It's like, if you don't feel great about it, it's probably not the right choice.
And here's a great analogy for that. You are hungry and you go to grab a piece of fruit and you see that it's rotten. You can smell it. You can see it. Your body knows it's rotten. Your body says to you, do not eat that.
It. Yeah.
Right? And that is a beautiful no.
Yeah.
No is a wonderful thing.
Yeah.
And notice that it's your body that gave you that no.
Right.
Your mind
like,
might go, well, I'm starving. I just need to eat
Yeah.
something. So, again, your body's always going to tell the truth. Your mind is going to lie, but like listen to the wisdom of
cues.
that no
Yeah.
holds a lot of value.
Yeah.
No means I'm not going to poison myself.
Right.
And we don't just poison ourselves with, what we eat. We poison ourselves with what we ingest.
Yeah.
Whether that's a book, whether that is a culture at a job, whether that is, being in a toxic relationship, whatever you want to call it. It's like you've got to listen to that deep inner no, because otherwise you are betraying yourself. You are abandoning not only your highest good, but you're enabling somebody else or something else to be toxic.
Yeah, absolutely. And even like taking it back to the simple yes and no's too. If you keep saying yes to everything, like at work, I'll take that project on, I'll do this because you want everyone to feel like you're the number one person. Yeah, you're going to end up doing like really badly at something and dropping the ball and forgetting something important. So figuring out how to find your no at work too is really important. It feels scary, I think, when people first start a job because they're like, I want my boss to be impressed with me and I'm so smart.
Yeah.
But I think like what people see like from that emotional intelligence perspective is being able to be like, I'm at my bandwidth right now. Actually, I've reached my bandwidth, so I can't take on another
and
project.
it's almost this like embodied way of overpromising and underdelivering, and then that's the surefire route to burnout, to resentment. Yeah,
and you can still say, I think I'll be able to take that on in a week and a half. I just need time to finish these 3 priorities first, and then I'd love to take that on. And so I think there's a way for the people who want to be a part of everything. You can still be a part of it. You just need to set those boundaries, or you won't show up as powerfully as you want to, and it'll end up not helping you in the long run.
And again, your mind might think it's a great idea, but your nervous system is going to be on the fritz.
Yeah.
And nobody wins with that either.
No. And you'll end up not sleeping or not taking care of yourself or not doing those self-care things we talked about. And even like more tactically than that, you'll drop the ball. You'll forget something.
Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. Okay. So we are how far into this company, like having, been birthed?
Yeah.
This is like 3 years,
no,
4
we're
years
still like
in?
fully incorporated was 5 years. So
5 years in.
We're kind of at past our toddler stage in that 5-year model. And then I've had I did it myself for 2 years, and then sort of have had like a team for about 3 years. So we're about 5 years in and sort of still finding our groove.
And what would you say your greatest, I want to say like the greatest like takeaway or the greatest lesson that you could impart to somebody on this journey that you've learned thus far?
Yeah.
And maybe that comes from your greatest challenge.
Yeah,
I don't know.
There's so many lessons. I think the biggest thing for me, or the biggest learning or lesson for me, was we have this end goal. And we have this end goal that's just like a big dream or a big thing that we want. And it feels a million miles away, and that feels so scary. And then that fear sets in and you're like, I'm never gonna be able to do this. This is insurmountable. It's crazy. And so remembering that big goal is just like 8,000 tiny little things. And so like one of my biggest learnings has just been like, just move forward one more day. Just take one more step and get there. And then the second thing that comes to my mind is like never forgetting sort of who you are. And I think that sounds so simple, but it feels, my success with my clients has come from creating authentic relationships with people who align. We talk about alignment a lot. And if I lose myself, that won't be authentic anymore and it won't work. And so I think sort of like that that straight and narrow. Like keep taking one step forward in the direction you want to be on and try not to come off that path, even though it feels sometimes like I should do this to make more money or I should do this to get there faster. Just remembering like, this is where I want to be and this is how I want to operate. And this is what's going to be best for me and my brand.
You know, it's interesting. I did a course a long time ago, and part of it was helping people identify what I called their PSA.
Okay.
So P meaning like their purpose, their core values, and then S being what is the steps that you can take in service of that purpose.
Yeah.
And then A being what is your action and accountability to that action.
Okay.
Right? So it's really defining step by step. How am I taking the next step, aligned step in the direction that I most want to go, that is supportive of my purpose, of who I actually am, in the direction that I most desire to go.
And allowing yourself to evaluate that can shift. Like, I think it feels like it's the same all the time.
So that actually came later. You're right on it, because that actually came later and with every step that you take, you're going to get feedback.
Yeah.
And when you get that feedback, you get to make a choice. And that's where your personal power lies,
right?
Is in the potential to pivot when and if you need to.
Yeah, because it's not like, obviously this, like from goal A to B, it feels like a straight line and it feels like it should be this easy straight line, but it's like, no, it's going to look like this, but it's like, you just need to make sure you're being mindful in all the decisions you're making and that end goal is still there and you're just finding a way to get there. So I totally agree with that. I think we feel sometimes like it's okay to change your mind.
Yeah. What do you use as a barometer? Because I really love that a big piece of what you just said was not losing myself.
Yeah.
What do you use as a barometer to make sure that you are in alignment, that you're not losing yourself, that every action that you take, every, step that you design forward for yourself is centered in a deep knowing and advocacy of who you are?
Yeah. So there's two ways I look at that. So one, when I'm trying to balance all of the things, for me, like if you're going to talk about dropping a ball or whatever, when I stop sort of taking care of myself, I know something's out of alignment. So like if I'm not making time for my workouts, if I'm eating like garbage all the time, or I'm not making time to connect with my family and friends because that fills me up. And so step one is noticing something's off. Like that's how stress shows up for me. So step one is figuring that out. And then in my business though, I would say a lot of this sounds so simple, but like it's so much gut. Like I get such guttural reactions and feelings to things, and it's such an indicator for me that this is working or it's not. And like a simple example would be, that you're talking to someone about someone they want to hire, and then it'll be like, well, it can't be a woman, or like, oh, I noticed in her interview she had an engagement ring on, so she's probably going to get married and then have kids, so we shouldn't hire her. And then you're immediately like, oh my God, this is not who I should be working with. And so like, I think you talked about this, but your body's going to tell you a lot too. So I think like gut instinct is a big one for me is, how did that conversation make me feel? Did I leave feeling better or worse? And then on the personal side, it's like, am I still making time for the things that fill me up outside of just work? And am I connecting with my husband? Am I feeling connected with my kids? And, we can't talk to everyone all the time. Obviously, it's hard to stay in touch, but like making sure the things that fill your cup up, whatever that looks like for you, make time for them. Because they're the first things to go, I find.
They are. Self-care is the first thing to slide off of people's agendas.
Because it's easy to push your workout or push that meeting or push that drink with a friend because it's like, oh, I don't have time. But it's like, make the time. And everything else
and it's so necessary. And it's so funny to me. It's like people, like, imagine if I was like, well, you only have so much time today. So what are you going to let slide off the agenda? Drinking water and going to the bathroom.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Water. Yeah.
Can you imagine if like, oh, I'm just not going to drink water and I'm not going to take bathroom breaks because that'll save me,
and you're like, what?
Time and energy that I could be doing something else. Right. But it's like, but when it comes to other self-care things, like a workout or whatever, people are like, oh, I'll let it go today because this other thing popped up. And it's like, this is not a negotiable.
You almost need to set them the same way you set meetings. So like I have this, you and I have the podcast today. We're setting this. This was in my calendar. It's like, okay, well, you can also put it in your calendar. Like even if it's just like, take 30 minutes and go for a walk.
Schedule it or forget it. That's what I tell my clients. Yeah. Schedule it or forget it. If you don't schedule it and you don't make it important, nobody else is going to.
And then you got to stick to it. That's the hardest part.
Well, and that's the other thing is when it comes down to, competing agendas,
Yeah.
right? Competing desires. When you do look at that moment in your calendar and you go, oh, wow, am I going to betray myself?
Right.
Am I going to let, as if I was letting going to the bathroom slip off the calendar, am I really going to let this moment that I deeply need in order to take care of and recenter myself go? And for what?
Right.
What are the stakes involved? What is the cost of letting that slip off?
We do also make work things. I don't want to generalize, but like we make work things such a big deal, and a lot of the time they're not.
The
world's not going to end if I don't send this. It's
yes,
gonna be okay.
we put such over importance. There's such an imbalance in our culture between, work and self-care.
Yeah.
Between, success and, what would be the right word? But like just self-care.
Yeah.
Right? It's like we are going to highly value taking that work meeting over taking a nap.
Yeah. Right.
Like there is, I was watching something the other day and the guy was like, when my parents call me, like, I've got to tell them like I had an interview, I finished a paper, I went on a date, I, have been working out and eating healthy. They don't want to hear I took a nap.
Right. You're feeling like you're not hitting those pieces. Yeah.
Right. I took a nap. I got a massage.
Yeah.
They're like productive.
But those things are, I know you know this, but that is what's going to make you productive.
And it's really just, it is where our perspective is and where our priorities are. And sometimes we're not measuring them correctly.
Or we overcomplicate things too. Like I think if you talk to any like nutritionist or like health expert, it's like, are you drinking water and sleeping and moving your body?
Yeah.
And we don't have to make it this like wildly complicated thing. And so like when you're thinking about your career too, like it doesn't have to be crazy complicated. Like even the question, I said this before, but as simple as like, am I feeling work every day better than worse? Like not every day is going to be great, but is it good more than it's bad?
Yeah.
Like we can sort of, let's simplify everything too.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, we've definitely looked at like, the past, we've looked at the present and sort of state of things. And then if we turn forward on the timeline, what is on the horizon? What are we looking at as what we are building toward and what's coming toward us?
Yeah.
For you.
Yeah, I think for me personally, so I'm in for another year of craziness. Like I have another baby coming, which is so exciting.
Congrats.
Thank you. But it's like now we're gonna get back into that mode of like newborn life and balancing work. So it's like let's stay aligned with our North Star. So that's definitely like immediate horizon is that very exciting. But long term for me, it's like how do I stay true to what I wanted for Linchpin, but also scale. So I do still want to grow and I want to expand. And I think we're just getting started. And that's such an exciting feeling. And that's so motivating to me. But also I don't want to lose. Like I think a lot of our positive feedback from our clients and our candidates is we have an incredible sense of communication. We have an incredible sense of urgency in the way we communicate. You will never not know where you stand. We're very database and metrics driven. We give clients a lot of information about their recruitment process. And so I think making sure that doesn't go away even as we get bigger. And what that looks like is probably, hiring more people. But I think not losing us or what we've been trying to be as we get bigger, but hopefully get great and keep growing and dream big and never stopping. And then long term, like figuring out like how do we keep things neat and tidy and we sell it one day and I'm retired on a boat.
I love an exit strategy. It turns me on. Yeah. I love it. I love big dreams, big goals, big visions.
Dream big.
And that it's so deeply in alignment. It is authentic. It is transparent. It is what it is. You know exactly what you're getting yourself into because you're walking the talk and you're talking the walk.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah. Great. I mean, it is great. And thank you for offering the world something so deeply needed.
Thank you so much. That's so kind.
I'm going to end with our final question.
Okay, I'm ready.
Okay. So imagine you have a mirror and reflected back at you is the woman who has been all the things, the woman who has been a people pleaser, who has become a mom, who has been a boss, who has been laid off, who has somehow always found a voice inside that says it's all going to work out. Just you know, all the yous that you've been, all the mountains that you've had to climb and then slid back down and then had to climb again. In this moment, like looking in the mirror and drowning out any exterior voices or opinions from a moment of self-advocacy and appreciation and agency between you and you, what is it that you have to say to yourself?
Yeah, I think maybe like when you're thinking like what you've always wanted to hear or what that looks like, but it's sort of like, you are enough, you're doing great things, and I always knew you could do it. That's like the part that like feels so nice. It's like, I knew it was in there. And so I feel like that's like when you think about little you, like you're picturing like little you, and it's like, although if you ever had self-doubt and what that looked like, and it's like, no, deep down you knew it was going to be okay and you figured it out. And you're going to keep figuring it out. And now I get to be this role model for these other little humans too, which is really cool.
And here's the catch. Even if you don't, quote unquote, figure it out.
Yeah. Well,
you are not going to die alone and in pain without the resources to do anything to change it.
You're capable.
You are resourceful. You are resilient. You have everything that it takes and then some to figure out what is going to come next, because there is always possibility. And what if it was even fun and easy?
Oh, yeah, exactly. I love it. I love that so
much. Where can people find you? How can people be, I always do this, part of your world?
Oh yes, please come on in. So we've used 2 platforms mainly. So on Instagram, we're at the Linchpin Co. So please come follow along. And then we're on LinkedIn a lot, obviously in the hiring world. So the Linchpin Co. on LinkedIn too. And then I'm C Pelly on Instagram, but most of our following is Linchpin.
I love it. I mean, I could talk to you for hours.
Yeah, this is so
I
fun.
just think that you are so sharp and insightful, and you are contributing to the world in a way that is novel and yet, you know, necessary. And
Thank you.
I celebrate you. I am honored that you came on to talk to me today. And I hope that everybody keeps their eye on what's going on at Linchpin, because I see it growing and swelling.
I love that.
For sure.
Thank you so much. This was so fun.
Thank you. All right, you guys, that is, you guys, you gals, you folks.
Everyone,
all the people out there, we love you. Thank you so much for tuning in as always, and we will see you next time on Look at Me Now. Mwah.
Join us for Look at Me Now wherever you listen to podcasts, and be sure to share, like, and subscribe.